Hi, I'm going to be doing a little bit more on this. I did a layer, the video pooped out, but of wetting this whole shape and adding a little bit of Hansa yellow deep and a slight amount of naphthol red, but now I think I'm gonna do this shape down here, and I'm not gonna wet the whole petal because I'm pretty sure that just the way the light was in the photo was that even though there's probably some yellow in here, that I think that sort of just gets blown out from the strength of the light source, the sun. So, and that's kind of a fun effect to have things sort of transition quickly to white, the white of the paper, to emulate that effect. But let me see, I'm going to wet this, and I have been refining these shapes a little bit. With my pencil, and hopefully if you're not sure how I've been doing that, you can ask, but maybe perhaps you can just figure it out too. The just looking at it sideways to see just how it's still pretty, it's pretty wet, so if I the paint I bring in is watery and the paper is really wet, it's gonna sort of just move around as a little bit more than I want it to. This particular paint doesn't seem to be doing that. Some pigments that are described as active, wet and wet, will sort of just shoot across. It's kind of fun to watch, but can be kind of annoying if that's not what you wanted. I think I'm gonna try to put in a little bit more yellow too. I want it watery, but not too watery. Losing some of the yellowness of that. And there's this back and forth of just making a little thirsty brush, and if I want to take some of that yellow away, I can do that with a thirsty brush after I get the color out of there. And if I want to try to bring in a little bit stronger color even as it's getting closer to the middle. I can do that, but it's still pretty, that shape is still pretty wet. There's even a little bit more red. That's all the red I'm going to do because I want to, I'll explain later. But let's do that with this one over here too. So, bigger soft brush. The video that didn't quite work out of this one, I was talking about when I am wetting a shape, a large shape, I do want to, well, there's a couple things, but usually what I'll do is do it in a direction where it's more okay that if I put too much water on and some of it drips off, that it just drips off the painting and onto the table, as opposed to if I did it the other direction and it was pooling up there, and it might just go over and create some blurbs that I don't want. So yeah, a little bit back and forth of wetting that shape. And I'll bring in a little bit of the Hansa Yellow Deep. I'm sure in these videos I misname these things sometimes, so I just have to chuckle at the teacher's memory. So I sort of just painted away all of my yellow. So I'm going to bring back a little bit more yellow. Very little. And I'm going to leave that one like that. And I want to look a little bit closer at this shape because it starts to get to where it's not really blended out. This is wet. Don't really want to. No, this one's dry, so I could. Yeah, I'm going to do this one. And if I wasn't videotaping this, I'd probably let that dry first, or get my hair dryer, because I'm going to move this around for this new shape, and it's going to influence anything that's still wet and can move around. But same sort of thing. I'm going to wet this shape, the whole shape, and nothing but that. Oh, I couldn't resist. And I can hear the question, a couple questions, at least in my own mind, of why did I start painting this and that shape is still wet too. At first I thought I was gonna paint around this little part right there, but then I remembered I want the yellow and the orange, the yellow-orange in that area. So now I'm just sort of trying to be careful about not mixing colors, not getting watery into that shape, because that'll make a background sort of thing, and it'll be fine. The other thing I was going to say is that when you are wetting a big shape like this to get a very gradual gradation. Look at that one. He's I'm tempting the fates. It does start to seem silly to paint that entire shape, even though I want just a little bit of color right there. And I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to soak a tiny bit of this up with my handy dandy paper towel rolled to a point. But back to wetting this large shape. If the water is not really clean and really just clear water, then if you don't go all the way to complete the entire shape that you're sort of addressing or painting. Then there can be sort of a little bit of pigment will dry wherever the water stopped. And if your water is clean, you can get away with you know, not having to do that whole shape. But I have found there's just several times where I thought I was being careful enough, and there was no way any pigment was going to get to where there was any water, and sure enough, after you let things dry, sometimes little bits will travel way more than you wanted them to and create a little demarcation line. So I'm just bringing in a little bit more of my Hansa Yellow Deep. At this point, I'm still kind of just not too worried about the eventual excuse me, kind of curve shape that it makes. Am I there? I think so. I think that's okay. I'm just going to paint. You know, I can see over here that it's still wet enough to pop in a little bit of color there too, because most of it just moved away. With the water. Yeah, especially when you're just sort of getting familiar with this, it's easier to just try managing one watery shape at a time. Ooh, that wasn't much. This is a little synthetic brush, and it's good for some things, but it doesn't hold very much paint at all. So a better choice for something like this is probably just a smaller natural hairbrush that will hold a little bit more paint and pigment. Let's see if that's true. It is, except oh, there's a little too much water here. Okay, I'm just saying, I get this is a little detail oriented. It may not be the way you want to paint, but maybe it is. I'm going to let go of that for now, but hopefully you're getting the idea. And by letting go, I mean doing a little bit more. there is definitely a patience aspect for this way that I like to paint. I can tell that some of the orange is creeping up, and I don't think it's creeping up too much, but I am just going to take away the water here, because that's mostly, anytime that the water needs some place to go when it's drying, it'll carry pigment with it. So I'm going to tip it like this and let it dry and deal with it the next round. Okay?